Hey, I got big news as we wait to get Tom Pappert on the phone from the Tennessee Star. We are 100 subscribers away on YouTube from 13,000. That is huge. So if you ever wanted to, you know what I should have done? I should have asked Congressman Tim Burchett, hey, can I have a Burchett board for our 13,000th subscriber to our YouTube? So if you want to watch the radio show, you can, and find us, of course, on Facebook and also YouTube and 997WTN.com and so forth. And I got to tell you that it's a lot of fun over there on YouTube. You want to check us out, feel free. Do we have him? Do we have Tom Pappert from the Tennessee Star? Tom, you with us? I don't hear anything. Tom, you with us? Wait.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We got you, Tom. How are you, man? All right, so Tom is with the Tennessee Star. Tom, always great to have you on. I think I've had you on the program a time or two. You did a great breakdown. I got a lot I want to cover with you. So Tennessee Star, of course, you folks do great work. Michael Patrick Leahy and yourself and all the others at the Tennessee Star do wonderful work, and I love to highlight it. So you took a look at the Emerson polling that showed that Afton Bain and Matt Van Epps were closer than a lot of people thought. And you had some questions for the folks who did the poll, especially when it came to some of the assumptions that they made as they were putting the poll together. So talk a little bit about your conversations with the folks at Emerson, because, you know, when I read what you wrote with the Tennessee Star, I smelled a rat.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure. It was really an interesting poll. If you look back at what happened in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District just last year, 13 months ago now, when President Trump won, well, he won by about 22 points. Former Representative Mark Green similarly won by like 21 and a half points. That means there's a lot of Trump voters in this district. But if you look at the methodology of this Emerson polling that came out last week, they polled about a Republican plus 12 in their methodology. That means they were polled 10% less Republicans, Trump voters, than actually voted in the election. And so the last election, that is. So we reached out to Emerson Polling and said, on what basis have you determined that there is going to be a significantly lower number of Trump voters casting their ballot? And it took a little while, but they did reply and basically said, look, we don't think Trump voters are turning out. They didn't really give us their methodology. They said it depends on other special elections, other midterm elections that have taken place in the district, but they couldn't really get across how this district went from plus 22 Republican to dead heat even. I think personally it comes from oversampling independents who they claim are going to break for Afton Bain in numbers that they did not break for the Democrat in 2024, and it comes down to polling less Republicans, and specifically Trump voting Republicans, that are going to turn out. But it all comes down to the listeners, of course. They could prove Emerson right tomorrow if they don't get out and vote for Matt Van Epps.
So I read the article on Tennessee Star, and there were two words that sort of jumped out at me: the word anticipated and the word expect, as in the pollsters anticipated and expect reduced turnout among the president's supporters. So I don't know, maybe I don't understand polling all that much, but what would they base that on? Because just last week we had the CNN polling that showed that President Trump's support among Republicans is still really solid. So I'm trying to understand what it is that they based that on, because what they ultimately did, what Emerson did, was they seemed to supercharge the excitement on the left with their polling.
That's exactly what was the result, and it does make one wonder if that was the goal. In my mind, this is a lot like the climate change science. These pollsters, it all depends on what their model contains and what they program their model to contain. So I'm not accusing them of putting out a push poll, but I will say that it is easy to do it. All you have to do is poll the certain demographics that give you the answer you're expecting. And again, if you look at the poll, it showed what I consider an overrepresentation of independents and Democratic voters and too few Republican voters. So if you're not polling Republicans, then you're not going to get a poll that says the accurate election results. And frankly, I think this is going to be a moment of embarrassment come tomorrow. I've heard some insiders say maybe it's within 10 points. I've yet to hear anybody serious other than these respected pollsters say it's between 2 points.
No kidding. So do you have Tom Pappert joining us from the Tennessee Star? So do you have an official prediction as far as how close you think it's going to be?
Well, I think there's a couple scenarios that are likely to occur. And if it is within 5 points, Afton Bain has said herself, the Democrats are going to consider this a massive victory, even if she loses, as seems to be the likely outcome. And they're going to use her race as the model for 2026. You're going to be hearing all of the same arguments she made, how they've reinvented Afton Bain overnight from this radical left-wing person to a moderate who just wants to make things affordable for the people of Nashville. That will be what they do everywhere. The other option is if Matt Van Epps wins by 10 to 15 points, which I think could easily happen. It all depends on how excited the Republicans are. I think the Democrats are going to once again have to go back to the drawing board, and they'll be in just as difficult a position as they were in November of 2024.
You know, it is interesting, Tom, you talk about how this will be a model for all of the other races heading into the midterm elections. So does that mean that they'll talk about, how much they hate the city and the culture that they want to represent? Is that what they're going to do?
Well, of course, that's what the real Afton Bain says. That's
Yes.
the Afton Bain who gets exposed on this radio station and the Tennessee Star and on even Fox News. It's gone national. But if you listen to her commercials, if you watch them on television, again, it seems as though there's two Afton Bains. There's the Afton Bain who hates country music, and then there's the Afton Bain who just wants to make things more affordable for the people of Nashville. It's almost like she has twin personalities.
I would not doubt that Afton Bain has multiple personalities. Anyway, so moving on from there, one of the things that I wanted to know was with the Emerson polling, when was the poll? Do we know when the polling was actually done? Because, we've found out a lot about Afton Bain over the past week and a half, 2 weeks. Was this polling done before we found out all of the crazy, wacky things that she said?
Well, if memory serves, the polling was actually conducted as this started to come out. So that is an important point, that this would have been when maybe your radio station was exposing some of these clips, but they hadn't quite made it to the level of, say, Fox News. So that could have a late impact. And even on, I think who that would have an impact on, I should say, is probably these independent voters that are supposedly breaking for Ben by about 50%. I think that an independent voter sitting in Nashville, seeing the Democratic candidate tear down their city, might just stay home or even vote for Matt Van Epps.
Well, the thing I find interesting, and I've been making this point all morning long, is that every answer that she gives in an interview seems to end with, and the millionaires and the billionaires of the Republican Party are destroying America, so on and so forth. Yet here she is, and I mentioned this with Congressman Tim Burchett a few minutes ago. She's doing an event with Al Gore worth $300 million. That seems a little hypocritical to me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's just like she's very careful about how she claims she doesn't receive support from corporate PACs. Well, last week at the Tennessee Star, we looked at an email that went out to voters in the district that comes from one of these Democratic PACs. In fact, I think it was a super PAC. So she's getting a ton of support. She's getting a ton of maybe not corporate, but PAC support. And it really highlights, again, this sort of two Afton Bains that they have running in the district simultaneously.
I think she's got two personalities. Neither one is good. All right.
I'd say that's accurate. Although maybe she has a third one that people who don't see her publicly get to enjoy.
Do you know what? Here's the deal. I've heard that she is a nice person. I've never interviewed her, but I've heard she's a nice person, just incredibly misguided. I'm having a hard time with the whole nice person bit because she was bullying ICE agents, but whatever. Can we talk about the Tennessee Star? You folks broke down the early voting, and I want to talk a little bit about that as well, because I do find this really interesting. So one of the things, and you folks broke it down by, we've got 14 districts, and Davidson County, of course, what immediately jumps out in the early voting was that Davidson County, I mean, it was a tidal wave of action in Davidson County. Not really surprising because the Democrats are clearly activated.
Oh, absolutely. I would say that I think it was just under a quarter of votes came from Davidson County. We're talking about the early voting period.
Yes.
Now, that is great for Democrats. It's actually very impressive. But I would also say there is a little bit of a silver lining. There's reason to get out to the polls because there's reason to be optimistic. And that is that Montgomery County and Williamson County are really punching above their weight in this election, as are the rural counties that make up the district. In fact, about a third of votes came from the rural counties. So while the Democrats, they claimed recently that they contacted 40,000 people in just 1 week. The DNC flew in activists to Nashville to make this happen. Wow. But I'm almost certain they're focusing their efforts on Nashville while Republicans are hopefully represented throughout the district.
Yeah, you look at Montgomery County and you've got 22% of the district's early vote share. Montgomery County, you do have, of course, Clarksville, but the rest of the county is rural and more conservative. You do have Williamson County, 17.5% of the district. And then you talk about, and I find this fascinating, and I don't know why, but the Republican bloc of more rural counties, this is basically the other counties like Dixon, Cheatham, Robertson County as well, 29,518 combined ballots, which make up 35% of all early votes cast. And so that is a very heavy Republican slice of the district. That could be huge in overcoming this blitz from Davidson County.
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, one thing that's important to remember is Republicans, even though President Trump now for 2 election cycles has said, vote early, vote as soon as you can, make a plan, get to the polls. What if something happens on Election Day? Us Republicans, we just do like voting on Election Day. So if Republicans also head out to the polls tomorrow in significant numbers that might look similar to 2024. As an example, I think Matt Van Epps, I should say, could have a very early victory party that night.
And let me ask you this, because a lot of people are saying that there is some lackadaisical attitude from the Republican side of the aisle. They're not coming out. They didn't come out in, the early voting. Would you say that's fair?
Well, it is true that the Republicans have waited kind of until this final week and a half. But if you look at Afton Bain, it almost seems as though it's inflated support. I mean, if you look at some of the headlines today, you would think that AOC and Representative Pramila Jayapal are in person in Nashville. No, they're attending a Zoom call. They're doing exactly what we're doing on the radio, but they're calling it a political rally. I don't think that's the level of enthusiasm that you are actually seeing from Republicans. Republicans, of course, have Mike Johnson on the ground today. They have a major rally undergoing in about an hour and a half, I think, where you're actually going to see Marsha Blackburn and John Rose opposing each other in the gubernatorial primary. They're going to put their differences aside and they're going to get on the stage and say to go out and vote for Matt Van Epps. So I think the Republicans, maybe they're a little late to the party. The RNC certainly didn't airlift in some activists to make door-knocking runs throughout Nashville like the Democrats did, but the Republicans seem to be showing up, even if it is a bit late.
One of the things, and I've been talking about this off and on for, a while now, but, you do have a certain contingent of the Republican Party and conservatives who say that Matt Van Epps is the lesser of two evils. How big of a contingent of the conservative movement across the 7th Congressional District do you think that represents?
I think they're relatively small, but they, of course, are very influential. But this is what I think it comes down to. Those people know that Afton Bain would be a complete and utter disaster. Maybe their candidate didn't make it through in the primary. I certainly know what that's like. My entry to politics was as a Ron Paul supporter in 2012. But at the end of the day, Matt Van Epps is no Mitt Romney. This is a pro-Trump, pro-America veteran and a conservative candidate that I think Tennessee, all over the state of Tennessee, is going to be proud of when he wins tomorrow night.
All right, we'll see what happens, Tom. By the way, I gotta say this, just because I'm really a big fan of Michael Patrick Leahy and the Tennessee Star. You guys won? Is it called a Dow Award? DAO?
Yes, we won the Dow Prize. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Absolutely. So, but talk a little bit, just very quickly, about what that is. This is a huge award for local journalism.
Well, it's through the Young America's Foundation. And again, it's called the Dow Prize. We actually won the Dow Prize for the best local journalism in the country. It's kind of the conservative answer to the Pulitzer Prize, which of course goes strictly to far left-wing candidates. It was a real honor. We won it for our series of reporting on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the so-called Maryland man, who we all now know, thanks to the Tennessee Star, I have to pat myself on the back, was actually stopped by Tennessee Highway Patrol and suspected of human trafficking as far back as November 30th, 2022. So it was a real honor.
Huge. Tom Pappert, how can people find you on X?
You can find me at Real Tom Pappert.
All right. And thank you, Tom. We'll be sure and have you back. It is 7:21 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 615-737-9986. The Super Text line is very active this morning, 615-737-WWTN. I don't know if you heard, Sam, because you were busy with all of the stuff going on behind the scenes trying to get Tom on Zoom. We are 100 subscribers away on YouTube from 13,000. And I want it on this show. So if you are not yet a subscriber to YouTube, to Super Talk 99.7 WTN and our YouTube channel, go right now and subscribe.
And get into your children's emails and force them to subscribe. Get into your parents' emails and make them subscribe. Do it.
Absolutely. And, we have the budget for absolutely nothing for the 13,000th subscriber. But that's okay.
Yeah, well, I mean,
you get all the wealth and knowledge of WTN.
That's true.
I mean, that in and of itself, hey. Anyway, so yeah, go and will you monitor the numbers on YouTube? That'd be
absolutely
great. All right, very good. It is 7:22. By the way, Joan Jones not in today, and I don't know what happened with the scheduling, whatever. So we are without Joan or Jay, but we do have some news coming up from ABC News. We tried, folks. I tried to put ABC News in timeout. And we actually did a snarky Daily Dan poll earlier. Should we skip ABC News? And overwhelmingly, the fine people of the YouTube chat said, no, you should not take ABC News. They're a bunch of commies. But one person overruled all of us, and that was the boss. And hope you're doing well. Welcome on in to a Monday, December 1st. It is cold cold outside, and Matthew Hurtt is joining us. I guess, Matthew, you're on Zoom, right? So are you in Washington, D.C., or are you here in Tennessee, where you're from? You want to bring him up on the audio console, please? Hold on, Matthew. Let's see if we can get Matthew up. All right. Do we have him? If we can't handle Zoom calls, we're not going to be able to do this. This is why we can't have nice things. Do we have him?
We have him. I think is his mic on?
Matthew, you're talking, but we can't hear you. You got to turn your mic on. So I guess, hey, Sam, let's get him on the phone. Because if we can't do the Zoom thing, I'd rather just get him on the phone, which is fine. And one of the things that I'm going to ask him is the weather tomorrow. You heard the weather forecast tomorrow. And the worry is that we could have some cold. We're going to have some little bit of a mixture of, like sleet, snow, that kind of thing. And so could that impact turnout? And we were just talking to Tom Pappert earlier from the Tennessee Star about how we had a lot of Democrats coming out from Davidson County, and there's a big push. And so Republicans, of course, we all know that they like to vote on Election Day. We like to vote on Election Day. And so that's going to be the question is, will that impact turnout? Matthew Hurtt is joining us here on Super Talk 99.7 on the phone. Matthew, let's talk a little bit about turnout for tomorrow. We've got some slick and wintry mix tomorrow. So the roads might be a little dicey, perhaps. We don't really know. But you think this is going to impact turnout for the 7th?
Dan, it's great to be with you by phone or on camera, wherever we are today, and I'm excited about the special election tomorrow. I do think that this issue of weather comes up all the time. in elections that are held in November or later in the year. Democrats, as you heard from Tom in the last segment, came out early from Davidson County, but those rural counties where it would be most concerning, where the roads might not be salted if there is precipitation, I think that it will be absolutely okay. The people who want to go out and vote, especially Republicans who do make a point to vote on Election Day, are going to come out. You've had Congressman Tim Burchett on the line about an hour ago. You've had Tom from the Tennessee Star. All of these individuals are looking at the numbers. Republicans are doing a last-minute push. And this could be a nail-biter, or as Tom said, Matt Van Epps could win by 10 to 15 points tomorrow.
So I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you, and I've asked Tim Burchett and also Tom Pappert about this too. We do have a certain contingent of conservatives, and I get it. I don't agree with them, but I get it. But they're saying that Matt Van Epps is the lesser of two evils. They're calling him a rhino and the rest of that. And so I guess my question is, how big of a concern do you have as somebody who watches politics that could impact Republican turnout?
Just like Tom said in the last segment, I came into Republican politics in the Ron Paul movement. I'm the king of voting for the lesser of two evils in a general election. We live in a first past the post, winner take all, two-party system where the House, as Congressman Burchett said, is the majority is held by the absence of a flu outbreak, and it's 4 seats right now. Matt Van Epps is one of those seats. And if we're heading into January, not only is it important for Republicans to hold the House to continue the Trump agenda, but it's also important for the narrative. And as you've heard and as we've talked about for the last several weeks, Democrats are enthused. We saw it in Virginia and New York and New Jersey, where more Democrats turned out and Republicans stayed home. This is an important bellwether that will drive the narrative for the next 11 months. It's very important for Republicans to turn out in this race.
You heard Tom and I talking about this Emerson polling that really seemed to fire up the left. And, you heard him say that one of the things that they were building this poll in Emerson is that they anticipated and expected, and I highlighted those two words. They anticipated and expected reduced turnout among Donald Trump's supporters. You're more experienced with this polling stuff than I am, but doesn't that seem like they're trying deliberately to impact the polling and thereby impact an election when clearly CNN has come out and said that Donald Trump's support among the Republican base is still incredibly strong?
Well, polling is a little bit of science and it's a lot of art. When they talk about modeling, it is who is going to turn out, who is going to show up. And what I can say is I can look at Virginia just a few weeks ago, and I can say Democrats were enthused. Of course, Virginia is a much different political landscape than Tennessee's 7th District. Democrats were much more enthused, and they turned out at a higher rate than they did in the 2021 race, and Republicans stayed home over 2024. Now, the numbers in Tennessee 7 are much different. It's a 22-point Republican district. The president and Mark Green won this district by more than 20 points. It would take a massive overcorrection for Democrats, even as enthusiastic as they are, for Democrats to overwhelm the Republican numbers. That said, polls don't vote, people do. And so if, there's a large Fort Campbell contingent in Montgomery County and Clarksville, there's a lot of rural counties with conservative voters, Davidson County, even Davidson County voters, you probably got 15 to 20 to 25% of Republicans. And then, of course, Williamson County. It's important for those folks to turn out and vote.
Let me ask you this question. Afton Bain, if you were just forget about your political bent or my political bent or the political bent of the audience, but just if you were just to be a neutral observer of politics, do you think Afton Bain is a good candidate?
Well, let's talk about the messaging first. I think that affordability, I think Democrats are showing us their playbook for 2026. You and I have talked about this for weeks. If the president and the Republican Party talk about affordability and listen to the American people, say, we hear what you're saying, the grocery prices or interest rates and all these things, if they empathize with the American people, as President Clinton said, I feel your pain. If Republicans are able to do that, we can overcome what I think is a pretty good message from Afton Bain, from what I've seen in this election. What I do think, though, is she's got this whole portfolio of left-wing activism that's just not concurrent. It is not in alignment with most Tennessee voters. I mean, we've seen in the General Assembly from session to session the radicals, the handful of folks from Nashville, Memphis, or Knoxville who make a fool of themselves on the House floor. That's the kind of representative Afton Bain is in Nashville, and that's who she'll be in Washington. If you want another AOC, another squad member, that's the kind of person. While her messaging may be pretty good in this cycle, she is just another left-wing radical from New York City or from Minnesota.
Yeah, I got to ask this because, to me, the whole affordability thing, and you're right. I mean, it is a great message, but this is going to be a two-parter. Number one, doesn't that talking point for the Democrats of affordability ring hollow based on the fact that it's been not even a year since Joe Biden was in office, and during his administration, we saw a suppression of wages because of all of the illegal immigration. We saw inflation up over 9%. We saw gas prices skyrocketed. The price of goods as well skyrocketed. So it seems like this whole affordability, it just falls flat based on what we saw during Joe Biden. That's number one. Number two, do you believe, and I'm going to have to take a quick traffic check, but the other part of that question is number two, Matthew Hurtt, do you believe that Donald Trump, what can he do differently from his side, and what can the Republicans do from their side to more effectively talk about affordability? All right, I threw a couple of things at you, Matthew. First of all, does this talking point of affordability, does it ring hollow given the fact that for 4 years we had Joe Biden where they literally tried to tell us that a recession could be a good thing?
You might be right about this, Dan, but as I've said countless times in conversations with you, the American voter political memory is very short. And this isn't, people are busy. The people who are driving into Nashville now to go to work, or they're they're preparing to take their kids to school, they aren't thinking about politics on a daily basis. And they know, by and large, what is happening to them right now. And if right now prices are up, if right now interest rates are up, then they are going to look to politicians who will make a promise. Now, this is a problem with politics, is we often judge our politicians based on what they say they will do for us and not what they actually do for us. And this is why I'm libertarian, because all politicians make promises and they can't keep any of them, except maybe Tim Burchett, who's fantastic. But this is something most Americans think about elections at election time, and they think about issues at election time. And what happened in January, or what happened over the last 4 years in the Biden administration, is not nearly as important as what is happening right now to their paychecks.
All right, so what can Donald Trump do to improve his message on affordability?
It's a great question, Dan. So we know the Democrats are promising affordability, but we know the policies don't actually produce affordability. I think the president should showcase the American people what we saw, the success in the campaign trail with Donald Trump in both elections in 2016 and 2024, was showcasing the American people and the American dream. So by bringing to the front people who have benefited from Trump's policies, people who have benefited from affordability efforts and measures and things, bringing jobs back to the U.S., showcasing those individuals to drive a narrative that the America First economic policy is beneficial to all Americans, which will then allow the casual voter, the casual political person who chimes in around Election Day to say, you know what, I know that kind of person, and they may be experiencing something. I may not be there yet, but if I continue to stick with this team, then it'll be beneficial for me. So I think bringing to the fore the average American who has benefited from Trump policies and showcasing them, maybe we do this at the State of the Union early next year, and then talking about those policies and at least running some kind of legislation through the House, through the Senate. You know, we've dealt with the government shutdown for a month and a half. Now let's get back to the policies that are important to the American people, and that's affordability. And what does that look like? And you file a couple of bills.
Well, there were within the Big Beautiful Bill. We did have tax breaks, no tax on tips, and some of the other things that the president did. Extension of the Trump tax cuts and so forth. Do you think that'll help?
Yeah, this is exactly a point that I just made, Dan. Bring some of those folks. Bring a waitress. Bring somebody who benefits from these cuts. Because what the Democrats want to say is that the tax cuts that Republicans pass are tax cuts for the wealthy. That is not always. That's not totally the case. They disproportionately impact the wealthy because the wealthy pay more taxes. But there are millions of Americans who are currently benefiting from the Big Beautiful Bill. It would take very little effort to identify just a handful of folks and do a direct-to-camera, like I may or may not be on the YouTube right now, and have them say, let's talk about how this has benefited me as a single mother trying to provide for my kid and I'm a waitress, or whatever the story happens to be. Those will pull on the heartstrings of the American people, and that will move people to the Republican team in the next election.
Troy Nehls, Republican out of Texas, has announced his retirement from Congress, this is a headline, joining a growing list of Republican lawmakers stepping down ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. You worried?
Yeah, he called President Trump and told him that he was going to do it. I'm interested. A lot of members of Congress will weigh in and decide if they want to run in the midterms. I don't know much about his decision, but I do think that, depending upon when that date is there a special election? This is another Matt Van Epps issue. Same with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, what do we do to maintain the majority headed into the midterms, and how does that play out in the narrative as we gear up for 2026?
All right, Matthew Hurtt, always appreciate you being on with us. Do you have any bold predictions for tomorrow?
Bold predictions. What time do the polls close in? I'll be watching from Virginia. I'm super excited. Anytime there's an opportunity to vote, I encourage my friends and family who live in Tennessee 7th District to get out and vote. It is a great way to express democracy. And also, if you support the Trump agenda, if you voted for Donald Trump in 2024, the only way he can continue to do what he's trying to do is if Matt Van Epps gets elected.
All right. Fingers crossed, and always appreciate having you on, Matthew Hurtt. And again, always appreciate your spot-on insight, in my opinion. It is 7:52 on Super Talk 99.7. Super Text line is open, 615-737-9986. You can always check us out on YouTube, Facebook, 997WTN.com, and anywhere you can watch videos or stream, we are right there.